I was standing at my father's funeral, heart shattered, mascara streaking down my cheeks, when my phone buzzed with a message that would change my life forever. It wasn't a condolence text. It wasn't support from a friend. It was a system. Notification from the security app linked to our luxury Manhattan condo. Access denied. At first I thought it was a glitch software issue. Tried again. Same result. Then another alert came through. You no longer have access to this property. Security has been notified. Standing next to my father's casket, surrounded by grieving relatives, I suddenly realized that while I was mourning the loss of the man who raised me, my husband was locking me out of our $30 million condo. What he didn't know: that condo didn't belong to him. It belonged to the man we had just buried. And it was never his to control. But that was just the beginning. My name is Vanessa Sterling, and I was born into quiet wealth. My father, Elias Sterling, was a real estate mogul who owned half the skyline. He raised me not with privilege, but with purpose. Real power doesn't announce itself, he'd say. It moves silently until it can't be ignored. So while people flaunted their riches on social media, my father taught me to earn respect before revealing my inheritance. That's why no one knew my background. Not my professors, not my classmates, and certainly not Damien Candyman, who would one day become my husband and try to steal everything from me. I met Damien in law school. He was handsome, charismatic, and full of ambition. The kind of man who could talk circles around professors and charm an entire courtroom. At first, he seemed genuine. He never asked about my background, never pried into my finances, and he seemed to love me for who I was, or so I thought. We started dating during our second year and married right after graduation. I kept my name Sterling because I loved my father deeply, and he was the one who made me who I was. Damien didn't mind. At least not then. After our wedding, my father offered us a gift, a stunning condo on the Upper East Side, 35 floors up, with floor 2 ceiling windows and panoramic views of Central Park. Damien was floored. You sure we can live here?" he asked. I told him my father had connections. What I didn't tell him was that my father owned the building outright. Damien moved in like a kid in a candy store. Suddenly, his watch collection tripled. He joined every exclusive club he could find, and our dinners turned into networking events. He became obsessed with image. At first, I excused it. We were young. We were building careers. But slowly, things changed. He grew colder, distant. He started criticizing my clothes, my friends, even how I handled my cases. When I landed a high-profile client, he dismissed it as a sympathy assignment. Then came the late nights, the vague text messages, the business trips that didn't make sense. I wanted to believe it was just work stressing till I found an unfamiliar earring in our bedroom. I confronted him. He denied everything, of course, gaslit me, made me feel like I was crazy. "You're just paranoid because your dad is sick," he said. And yes, my father's health was deteriorating. Cancer, stage 4. Watching him fade was like watching the sun set on everything I knew, and Damien used that to his advantage. While I was caring for my dad, Damien was building his exit strategy. The day of the funeral, Damien claimed he had an important meeting. He said he'd meet me at the cemetery. He never showed. I thought maybe he was grieving in his own way. Instead, he was filing legal documents, faking signatures, using forged paperwork to try and take ownership of our condo. He assumed that once my father was gone, he could manipulate the system. He didn't know my father had already protected me. After the funeral, when I realized I was locked out, I rushed to the condo in disbelief. The doorman looked away. The elevator keycard didn't work. I called Damien. No answer. I texted. Nothing. Eventually, security escorted me out, citing a legal motion filed hours earlier. Damien had claimed I was a threat, that we were separating, that the property was his. I was humiliated, betrayed, and furious. I went to my father's attorney, shaking with anger. That's when everything changed. He planned for this, the attorney said. Your father knew what kind of man Damien was. He handed me a file. Inside was a legal fortress, deeds, trusts, shell corporations, Velial designed to protect me. The condo was owned by a company headquartered in the Cayman Islands. That company was controlled by a private trust. I was the sole beneficiary. The paperwork Damien forged. Useless. Even better, there was a clause in my father's will. A specific instruction that if Damien attempted to claim any property, he would be subject to criminal prosecution. My father didn't just protect me. He set a trap. With my attorney's help, I filed a countersuit. We froze the condo's title, subpoenaed Damien's forged documents, and traced every illegal move he made. The evidence was overwhelming. Damien had used my grief as a smokescreen to stage a coup. But he underestimated me, and he underestimated my father. The courtroom was packed. Damien swaggered in, flanked by his high-powered legal team. He still thought he had the upper hand. Then the judge asked for the real ownership documents. We handed them over. I watched Damien's face drain of color. His lawyer flipped through the pages, then whispered something that made Damien's jaw tighten. The judge ruled immediately. Damien's claims were fraudulent. He was removed from the property within 24 hours, and pending charges for forgery and fraud were filed against him. I returned to the condo that night. Alone, I walked through every room, remembering my father, his laughter in the kitchen, his voice echoing from the balcony. I poured a glass of wine and stood at the window, looking out at the city he built, the city I now owned a part of. I wasn't just a grieving daughter anymore. I was a woman reborn. Since then, I've taken over a large portion of my father's business, restructured. His company brought in ethical partners and created programs to help young women navigate legal and financial systems. Damien's name is now synonymous with scandal. And me? I'm still Vanessa Sterling. Stronger, wiser, unshakable, so I leave you with this. If you were standing in my shoes, looking out at a city that once tried to erase you, and a man who tried to steal everything while you were at your lowest, what would you have done? Would you have let him walk away quietly? Or made him regret ever thinking you were weak?